This is Gareth Aden. It's January 27, 2022, and it's my pleasure to be here this morning with one of Middle Tennessee's leading pension and employee benefits attorneys, Jim Berry, to take an oral history on behalf of the Nashville Bar Association Oral History Project. Jim, good morning.
Good morning, Gary.
Let's begin by having you state your full name, please, sir, and your date of birth.
James Wilson Berry, Jr., October 29, 1949.
And where were you born, please, sir?
I was born in southern West Virginia, Beckley, West Virginia.
And how large a town is Beckley?
Oh, it probably at the time was about 15,000, I suppose.
Okay. Is this coal country, West Virginia?
It is. It is.
And
both of my grandfathers were coal miners.
your grandfather on your mother's side, I know, did coal mining, and your other grandfather was also a coal miner.
That's right.
What, tell me about your family growing up, your mom and your dad, and what they did and what their names were.
My dad was James. I'm a junior, so it was James Wilson Berry Sr. I learned from my grandmother years later when we named our son David Wilson Berry that the Wilson was a mistake. It was supposed to be William. And the birth certificate finally got back to Eccles, West Virginia, and it was too much trouble to change it, so it stayed James Wilson Berry. And my dad was born in Eccles, West Virginia, in a coal camp, and his mother left his dad when he was 7 years old and was a single mom in the Depression. So that was kind of she was a real hero there of the family. My mother, Evelyn Underwood, also, she was the youngest of 9 children, the only girl, 8 older brothers, and her father had his back broke in the mines. She had a brother who died in the mines, and a brother who died of rabies. And so she was, they both went to high school together there in Beckley.
What did your dad do after high school?
He was joined the Navy in the latter part of World War II and served in the Philippines as an aircraft mechanic.
And then when he returned to the United States,
he went to West Virginia University on the GI Bill, and then worked as a banker, and later selling industrial life insurance in the coal camps and for Metropolitan Life, and then had his long career with Columbia Gas Company starting off in the promotion department. We lived in West Virginia until 1960, and he was transferred to Lexington, Kentucky, as the promotion manager for the Lexington district, and served in that situation until they got the gas shortage and curtailments, and they had more gas. They didn't have enough gas to supply their customers, and so he ended up being a community relations manager in Parma, Ohio, where they negotiate gas rates in Parma, city by city, and so he got to play golf every day with the city fathers and everything. It's a suburb of Cleveland there until he moved back to Kentucky to be closer to the kids and everything, and retired at Frankfort.
Was your dad the first in his family to go to college?
He was.
Where, just to go back for a second, while you were living there in Beckley, in your earliest memories, where was your home located?
We lived on just kind of out in the kind of rural, not the rural part, but in a kind of a development called Crescent Road, and I went to Crescent Elementary School, which there was one room for each grade. Actually, we'd go and play back in the woods. My best friend Charles Cole and I we'd ride our bikes to school or walk to school and play in the woods around there. And I realized years later that one of the guys whose houses I went to play with was Jim Justice, who is the current governor of West Virginia. And he graduated as well from Crescent School. So that was just a sort of thing where you got out and you walked and rode your bike and everywhere and played in the woods.
And you knew most of the folks in town, I guess.
Well, we were kind of isolated up on our road, so I didn't, it wasn't that, didn't know most of the folks in town. It wasn't that small a town, but knew everybody kind of up and down in our community.
What did your mom do? Did she work outside of the home?
She did not after they married. She worked as in a bank in California when my dad was in the service. She worked there until the war was over, and I can remember in the first house I remember living in. There I stayed with my grandmother, and they were gone to California. I realize now to kind of see if that wasn't the booming place to be and to move. So I guess I came close to growing up in California, but did not. He came back and stayed in West Virginia until 1960.
Tell us about the rest of your family. Did you have brothers and sisters?
Got a younger brother and a younger sister. My younger brother is 18 months younger than I am. My sister is 5 years younger. He followed me to Vanderbilt, and she ended up being a lawyer. Went back to law school at 37. She had asked me about what I thought about going to night law school. She was a paralegal at the time and thought, she was supervising third-year associates, and what about going to law school? And I said, I don't think I would go to night law school. If you want to go to law school, go to law school. And sure enough, about a year later, she was coming to Nashville, and she was coming to interview at Vanderbilt, and she had applied to the top 10 law schools in the country and got in, I think, to all except Harvard and Yale, and ended up going to NYU, and is now a lawyer in New York. My brother worked as a computer kind of guy for SAS, doing computer software work in North Carolina until he retired early to come back and help my dad take care of my mother when she was older and not well.
Well, that's very interesting, that growing up in this small town, coal town in West Virginia, and yet two of the children of the family ended up being lawyers.
Yeah, I never had any idea. That was the last thing in the world I thought that I would ever be, was a lawyer. I didn't know lawyers in the family, and I didn't know what lawyers did. I thought they memorized statutes, I suppose, if been put to the task.
How old were you when the family moved to Lexington?
I was 10 years old.
What was it like to move from Beckley to Lexington?
Well, the first question I asked was what kind of basketball did they play, because I was watching Jerry West play,
Yes.
for the NCAA finals in 1960, and that was a big deal, and I was disappointed of leaving West Virginia basketball, and I wanted to know about what Kentucky basketball was. My uncle I'd been to Lexington because my uncle was a football coach. He coached football for UK under Bear Bryant, and before Bear Bryant left, realizing it was a basketball school rather than a football school.
Tell us a little bit about your schooling in Lexington, what grades you were in, and sort of how you liked it.
It was a kind of fortuitous that we moved when we did, because I moved to, I was in the 6th grade when we got to Lexington. And in 5 years, I went to 6 different schools because they were having a school funding problem. So I went from going to a grade school in the 6th grade over to a junior high school. I went to the 7th grade in a not a condemned, but a converted girls' dormitory from Transylvania College, where they had 7th graders from all around the county. And then in the 8th grade, I went to split sessions. I was in the afternoon session at Lafayette Junior High School. Then they built a new junior high school for 9th grade, and back to Lafayette for high school. So it was without moving once, we were transferred to six different schools. And I say it was fortuitous because the 7th grade was a special year for me. It was the smartest guys, the best teacher I ever had, Mac Bailey.
Tell us about it.
Mac Bailey did, he was ahead of his time. He did, I remember we had Baileyville, where I ran the gas company, and we had, somebody was a banker, somebody was a doctor, and we used kind of like monopoly money to kind of learn how about business and that sort of thing. He taught us chemistry, physics, plane geometry. We took anthropology off the television from the UK anthropology course, and actually took that college course. And he did half of it, and we had someone else who taught, Mrs. Murphy, who taught the English and social studies part. But it was the fork in the road that made the rest of my education remarkable. So that was it. And I wonder how in the world, coming from West Virginia, they decided that I was going to be put in that accelerated program, because it was some hand-picked students that they thought they were going to see how much we can teach them in a year. And they did a great job. And the chemistry and physics I learned in 7th grade was just about as helpful as what I learned in college and high school.
So I take it at this point in your education, you were sort of leaning towards the science side.
That's right.
And that's where your grades were best, I presume.
That's right. I decided I wanted to go to engineering school, and so I applied to University of Kentucky, Purdue, but then Vanderbilt and Duke, as I thought would be a better way to, if you're going to be a gear, go to some place that had some liberal arts and that sort of thing. And so that's how I focused on Vanderbilt and Duke. And Vanderbilt gave me the most money, but it wasn't enough. When I got the financial aid report from Vanderbilt, I just kind of tossed it aside because I thought we couldn't afford that. And my mother pushed me into let's try it. Let's just go and see how
we can make it work.
And just a leap of faith. And it ended up with what I was able to earn in the summer and working, and with the increase in the financial aid, I was able to the last year, I think the only thing my folks provided was my brother and I shared a car. And so it turned out to be she was always a skinflint, my mother, and I was really surprised that she pushed so far for me to go. She thought it would be good. My dad was puzzled. I remember him asking me, I don't understand why you would want to go. You could stay here and go to UK and have some change to rattle around in your pocket. And why would you want to go and just be strapped at Vanderbilt? And it turns out that they did not. They sent my brother to Vanderbilt, and my sister, she was a girl. She didn't need the same kind of education.
I see what you mean.
And so she wanted to go to Vanderbilt and went to UK instead. I didn't learn that until years later. She was the smartest of the three, I think, but she didn't get the opportunity.
How things have changed. Yeah. Jim, did your mom, did she place a lot of emphasis on education, and did she push you?
She did. I think she realized her brothers got out of the coal mines through the GI Bill. Her brothers were in the Navy, and they all came back and went to college. And I think my dad was just putting two and two together from our conversations. He had a uncle who was a contractor. Built a lot of houses in the coal camps there when the mines were booming, and he encouraged my dad to go into business with him. And he looked back and wonders what would have happened if he had done that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people have made a lot of money in construction in West Virginia, but my mother, I gather, was adamant that he needed to go to college, and so they went to West Virginia University, and he worked straight on through, so he graduated in, I guess, about 3 years, going to summer school and everything. But
Well, I had recalled that I think you told me a great story about one evening while you were in school. You wanted to watch a movie on TV very much, and your mother just put her foot down. Tell us about that, because I think it gives some insight into your
well,
mom.
it does. It was when I was in the afternoon session, which in the 8th grade, that was a horrible year because you didn't go to school until 1:30 and you didn't get off until 7:30. And so in the morning you were just, you couldn't do anything that was going on at night, and you were just waiting to go to school in the morning. You didn't get dressed until late. So it was somehow I got a C in history, and getting a C was unacceptable. Well, that was back, of course, when you can't just put a CD in and watch a movie. And Thunder Road with Robert Mitchum was on TV.
Oh, absolutely.
And I mean, that was the movie, and it was special because when it first came out, and we saw it in the theater, the two cars that Robert Mitchum drove as a bootlegger were the 1950 Ford that we had and the 1957 Ford that was my dad's company car. And so it was just cooler than all get out. And I was going to get to watch Thunder Road on TV. And since I'd gotten it was non-negotiable. Nope. Until you get your grades up, you can't watch a movie on TV. So,
Well, I guess everyone who's successful through education probably has one parent at least that really emphasizes the
well,
studies.
my dad did as well. I mean, I can remember many times him sitting me down and just talking about courses to take. He encouraged me to take speech, and he talked about how important different things were. And in fact, I remember him thinking about, I hadn't even thought about this before, but he working for Columbia Gas and how the kind of benefits that they provided, and that was important to him as far as staying with Columbia Gas Company is because they had a pension plan and so forth. And so that was it was kind of one-way conversations. They weren't lectures, but they were, stern lectures, but they were emphasis about what you needed to do.
You knew what he wanted you to do.
Exactly.
Yeah. Before we move on to Vanderbilt and your years there in undergraduate school, anything that we left out in high school that you think is important, extracurricular activities or things like that?
Oh, well, I guess I was Boy Scouts and Church Youth Group were both things that were important, and ended up. I think I never did make an Eagle Scout like my son did, but it was something that was that was important, and being and kind of led me, I guess, when I got to Vanderbilt. I got active in the Baptist Student Union, and I suppose that was all from going to youth group, youth camp down in Ridgecrest, outside of Asheville in Black Mountain, North Carolina.
Oh, yeah.
Which ironically is where my son is the executive director of the camps down there. But that was a special time. I was younger than, just because of the way my birthday fell than a bunch of folks. I was a little late getting my driver's license. I would ride my bicycle everywhere. And I look back now at the highways and everything where I rode. It was just a 3-speed bike. And it's amazing that I don't think my folks asked me much about where I was going, you know. I
Yeah.
didn't have curfew. It was a trusting sort of a relationship.
It's a different time and place.
It was.
It really was. Let's go. Let's come now to you're taking off and coming to Nashville for Vanderbilt. Sort of, how did that go, and what are the things that stand out for you about your undergraduate years?
Well, first is just comparing how they do college choices now compared to what they did then. I did not visit any of the schools that I applied to, and there was no earlier orientation or anything, and I can still remember being dropped off at the corner of West End and 21st Avenue with my parents and my brother and my sister, and everything we could get in the car. That was, there wasn't any trailer or van or anything, and watching them drive off. And what a lonely feeling that was, and not knowing a soul on the campus.
Yeah.
And it turns out that a whole lot of my best friends were the folks I met that first week. I mean, continuing on through that, I was not in a fraternity. I was active. Kind of the Baptist Student Union was kind of a fraternity of sorts.
Right.
Some of the sharpest, most liberal people I knew, ironically now, were at the Baptist Student Union. There were the top 3 people in the graduating class were very active there. And one of the things I learned to do in high school was play ping pong. And there was a ping pong table there that I would frequent. But that was it was an amazing time to be at Vanderbilt.
What year did you
I
begin?
graduated in 1971.
Okay.
So we went from
Yep.
freshman year, the women had hours and had to sign out and say where they were going and who they were going with and the mode of transportation and so forth. And people were talking about the student government was pushing for what they called parietal hours, where you would visitation in the men and women's dorms. You could go and visit in the women's dorm, or you could bring a date back to the men's dorm. And from having that kind of an argument about parietal hours and having to sign out and have women have to be back in the dorm at certain times, by the time I left, it was 24-hour visitation was permitted in both the men's and the women's dorms. And went from we got there, they had the women had to wear dresses to lunch or for Sunday lunch, had to wear a raincoat over their gym clothes to go to PE and so forth. So and then there was, of course, the Vietnam War and the protests and everything that were going on, and Chancellor Hurd was appointed by Nixon as the kind of chairing a committee on studying violence in on campus, and so it was an amazing time to be there.
How did your classwork go? What classes stand out?
I had 6 8 o'clock classes my freshman year, I only got to take one elective course because in electrical engineering it was pretty much set what you had to take. They put me in advanced math, which was theoretical, and I remember sitting on the front row at 8 o'clock. It was a 4-hour course. There was 3 8 o'clocks and 1 o'clock right after lunch, and I swear I nodded off every day. And how in the world that woman gave me an A, I don't know, but it was just so up in the air, impractical, and I felt like I was getting farther and farther behind all my engineering folks that were taking practical engineering math, and I finally, sophomore year, got to get over and finish up in engineering math. But it was interesting talking about what was going on. There were more women in my engineering class than almost any engineering class in the country. So that was good. That the other thing that stands out that was most memorable at just generally is I was there at when Martin Luther King was assassinated.
Yes.
And
almost everyone remembers where you were when you heard about that.
Well, and I was at the BSU, and
were there any professors? Were there any professors there at Vanderbilt as an undergraduate that really made an impression on you?
Before we go to that, Gareth, before our technical difficulties, I was talking about when Martin Luther King was assassinated, and they had the Impact Symposium and Memorial Gym the night after. It was a pre-planned speakers program. And after the assassination, they had a dusk to dawn curfew, and you had to have special permission from the mayor and the police to continue to have that program. And I remember sitting on the gymnasium floor as they introduced Julian Bond, who was then a Georgia legislator from Atlanta.
I remember his name. I do.
And he had a very prominent career after that, but he was introduced, and he got up to the podium and just stood there and let the place just get completely deathly quiet. You could have heard a pin drop on the floor there on the tarp that they had spread underneath our folding chairs. And he looked out over the audience and he said, "Nonviolence died last night in Memphis." And then he just let it sink in. And so when I think about that, I still hear feel the hairs on the back of my head stand out.
Yeah.
But professors, there were. I had a number of good teachers there, but again, it was not any. They were not. I haven't used those courses for so long. I do remember taking New Testament and logic in some of the non-technical courses, but there was one professor who was Ensign Johnson, who ended up being provost. And I guess he was maybe considered to be the literate engineer because they let him be over there in the administration, and took control theory from him. And I don't remember a thing about control theory, but I mean it was applicable to things other than electrical engineering. It used for other kind of issues. And I remember him telling us, he said, "Now remember, if you don't know anything else, a system will become unstable if you have a pole in the left half plane." And so I have waited for years to kind of act like I know more than I know. But when we're talking about systems and that sort of thing, whether it's social systems or whatever, things will be unstable if you throw a pole in the left half plane.
We're having problems.
Oh.
So what we're going to do is I brought Cameron in.
Oh,
We're
okay.
going to
Cameron's going to see if she can fix it.
Well,
I don't know about that. We just might switch it
we're
up
going
a
to
little
switch you
bit.
over
Yes.
to a Zoom taping, and then that way we know that'll work.
Okay.
And then
Will
you'll
it
just
be able to be put together?
Yes, we can put it together. So
Okay.
you don't have to start over.
Good.
Gonna save you the 30 minutes you already tried.
You can. You just cut out, and then we can't even pull you up on our computers. It may be taping fine. We're just unable to see it. Okay.
Yeah.
So we don't want to have to make you do it over.
I remember one of the worst experiences I ever had was when I had spent 4 hours
Oh no.
on one of those little cassettes, and
Oh yeah.
and my secretary erased it. I mean, after you finally got it all out of your brain, you've been preparing all this time, you got it, and just the thought of having to start over. I mean, you just felt like my career's over.
I can't do this. I can't do it. I can't do it.
We've had to do one over again. That was Jimmy Lynn's.
Yeah.
There at Vanderbilt as an undergraduate that really made an impression on you.
Before we go to that, Sheriff, before our technical difficulties, I was talking about when Martin Luther King was assassinated, and they had the Impact Symposium and Memorial Gym the night after. It was a pre-planned speakers program, and after the assassination, they had a dusk to dawn curfew, and you had to have special permission from the mayor and the police to continue to have that program. And I remember sitting on the gymnasium floor as they introduced Julian Bond, who was then a Georgia legislator from Atlanta.
I remember his name. I do.
And he had a very prominent career after that. But he was introduced, and he got up to the podium and just stood there and let the place just get completely deathly quiet. You could have heard a pin drop on the floor there on the tarp that they had spread underneath our folding chairs. And he looked out over the audience and he said, "Nonviolence died last night in Memphis." And then he just let it sink in. And so when I think about that, I still hear feel the hairs on the back of my head stand out.
Yeah.
But professors, there were. I had a number of good teachers there, but again, it was not any. They were not. I haven't used those courses for so long. I do remember taking New Testament and logic and some of the non-technical courses, but there was one professor who was Ensign Johnson, who ended up being provost, and I guess he was maybe considered to be the literate engineer because they let him be over there in the administration, and took control theory from him. And I don't remember a thing about control theory, but I mean it was applicable to things other than electrical engineering. It used for other kind of issues. And I remember him telling us, he said, now remember, if you don't know anything else, a system will become unstable if you have a pole in the left half plane. And so I have waited for years to kind of act like I know more than I know. But when we're talking about systems and that sort of thing, whether it's social systems or whatever, things will be unstable if you throw a pole in the left half plane.
One of the other interesting things about being at Vanderbilt in that time is talk about my senior year. So I had, if you were near the top of your class, you had 7 or 8 good offers. You graduated a year ahead of me. You were lucky to have one good offer. If in my year, engineering is an up and down. So time commitments or anything like that. But, so,
Did there come a point, Jim, when you sort of decided that you liked the idea of going into law practice rather than engineering?
I did,